Welcome back to our channel, where we explore the extraordinary experiences of those who have glimpsed the other side. Today, we bring you the profound and deeply personal near-death experience of David Williamson, a man whose life journey took him through pain, anger, and ultimately, an unimaginable transformation. David grew up in Yanceyville, North Carolina, a small town with a population of just over 3,000. Life there was a blend of adventure and hardship. As a child, he saw the world through a magical lens, exploring the woods, climbing trees, and searching for hidden treasures in the dirt. But behind that wonder was a darker reality, one shaped by the deep social injustice and tensions that ran through his town. According to David, Caswell County, where he was raised, has long been known for its high levels of inequitable treatment. The weight of this history shaped his upbringing, filling the air with unspoken fear and unaddressed trauma. His family, having experienced exclusionary behavior firsthand, harbored deep resentment, and as he grew older, that resentment became his own. "I've literally seen them march up and down Main Street multiple times," David recalls. Imagine that for a moment. The main street of your town, the busiest road, being overtaken by people carrying symbols of hatred. And as a child, watching the adults in your life, your mother, your aunts, tense with anger and pain, unable to do anything but endure. For David, this reality bred a deep-seated rage. He began to see the world through a lens of hostility, feeling as though he had to hate back just to survive. "It justifies every negative thought you have," he admits. "You start making sweeping statements about people, and it all seems to make sense." But life is never that simple. Even as he harbored this hatred, David couldn't ignore the contradictions. One of his earliest childhood memories was of a white teacher, Miss Mueller, at his preschool. He recalls sitting on her lap during story time and feeling her love and warmth. There were others too, white individuals who saw potential in him and tried to open doors. Yet, the narrative in his head left no room for these contradictions. Hatred became his armor, his shield against a world that had already deemed him an enemy. But that armor came at a cost. David's nervous system was always on high alert. His body was constantly braced for a fight, ready for war at any moment. The stress took its toll, and over time, his health began to deteriorate. High blood pressure, digestive issues, chronic pain. His body was screaming for relief, but he ignored the warning signs. Then came the night of February 1st, 2021. David said he was sitting in his garage with two friends when he felt an unfamiliar pain, a ripping sensation in his back, just behind his heart. His shoulder ached as though it were about to detach. At first, he thought it was just another flare-up of his chronic back pain. But something about this was different. "Man, this back pain just shifted gears," he told his friend, his eyes wide with unease. As the pain worsened, he made the decision to go to the emergency room. His son's mother, Trish, was working from home, and he called out to her, "I think I need to go to the ER. This isn't getting better. It's getting worse." On the way there, things escalated. "I was losing my breath, suffocating," he says. "I had to breathe deep just to stay conscious." By the time they reached the emergency room, David could barely stand. They placed him on a gurney, and almost immediately, he lost consciousness. But what happened next was something he never could have imagined. David's journey into the afterlife was just beginning. He had found himself in what he describes as the vast black void. Yet rather than emptiness, he felt an overwhelming sense of completeness, love, and understanding. Every thought he had was instantly met with clarity. He wasn't just witnessing this place, he was a part of it. At this moment, David realized that the light, what so many near-death experiencers talk about, was positioned up and to his right. The emergency room, where his body lay lifeless, was now far beneath him, down and to the left. He was aware of these things, but there was no fear, no confusion, only a deep sense of belonging. As he was experiencing his near-death journey, his attention seemed to scatter across the cosmos, as if there were no limitations to his awareness. "When I was in space, I was interested in everything. My attention just kind of moved all around." There was a moment when he looked upward, at a bright light, unsure whether to engage with it. "There was a point where I was looking up at the light, trying to decide if I was going to entertain it or not. But eventually, something shifted. and his focus returned to a different plane of existence. As he looked down, something remarkable happened. When my attention went from the upper angle down back to the left, I went through me and I was just a glowing orb of light. In that moment, he felt truly alive, more alive than ever before. I had never felt more alive than when I was that glowing orb of light. There was no pain, no confusion, no identity struggles, just pure awareness. I understood everything. The pain, the confusion, the identity stuff was gone. He understood in that state that we are not our bodies. We are all orbs of light. We're not these bodies. He explains how he experienced the orb as being perfect, not influenced by the usual human tendencies of judgment or bias. It was aware, but not attached to human identities. I experienced the orb of light as being perfect, as being not confused, as not being contextualized in a human sense. From this vantage point, his understanding transcended the boundaries of race, politics, and identity. The fighting was done. The fighting that we hold on to in this life was done. As he observed those around him, especially the woman who was grieving his death, he felt a deep sense of peace. The biggest image that sticks with me is the woman that was bothered by me dying, holding her face. But there was also a part of him that wished he could communicate the beauty of what he was experiencing. If there's any small part of this experience that I was disappointed about, it was that in that moment I couldn't tell her, "No, don't be sad. This is beautiful." He couldn't explain the overwhelming peace and freedom he was experiencing. I'm not confused about what's happening. This is beautiful. This is the most alive that I've ever felt. As the resuscitation efforts continued, he was still aware of the people around him, each one processing the situation differently. Some were simply doing their job, mechanical in their approach, while others were emotionally invested in his well-being. Some of them were kind of like mechanical. They were just doing their job. They didn't have any emotional investment, and I could feel all of that. But there was one person in particular who stood out to him. This individual seemed deeply affected, almost as if he felt responsible for ensuring that he didn't die. There was one person that was in front, kind of to the angle, and he was really going through it. In his mind, it was almost like he was responsible for making sure that I don't die. When he regained consciousness, his first words were focused on checking on others. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I blurted out was, "Are you okay?" He was still searching for the woman he had seen before, concerned about her emotional state. But the man in front of him was quick to redirect his question. "Are you okay?" he asked him. He then noticed something strange. I saw this rubber pad that the defibrillator pads were placed on my chest, and I saw the indentation from where they had been. In that moment, the reality of the situation hit him. I looked down. I was like, "Oh, you really were dead." Everything came flooding back. The moment of resuscitation made him aware of the depth of what he had just experienced. When I looked down and saw the pad, I realized what had happened. I was dead. I didn't feel anything. No pain, no trauma at all during the process of me dying. As he reflected on the experience, he realized that his fear of death had completely vanished. I have no fear of dying. I have no fear of what's next. When he returned from this near-death experience, everything around him seemed more vivid, more intense. When I came back from my near-death experience, I was so painfully aware of everything around me. People's pain and confusion. He had always been empathic, but now, it was as if his sensitivity to others' emotions had been amplified exponentially. It was times 5,000 when I came back from the near-death experience. This overwhelming sensitivity was difficult to integrate back into everyday life. He didn't have time to process it all. I didn't have the opportunity to just sit and heal. As soon as I was able to stand up, I had to go back to work. At work, he noticed a profound shift in how he was interacting with others. I'm interacting differently. I'm seeing better results. I don't have to go to work and fight over politics. I don't have to go to work and deal with race stuff. Without the weight of anger, resentment, or identity politics influencing his decisions, he felt lighter. I'm not carrying that around me anymore. I don't feel like there's somebody trying to block my progress. None of those stories are in me anymore. He then reflects on the deeper lessons his experience taught him about personal responsibility. What having that experience does to you is it gives you this extremely radical sense of accountability, all the way down to the thoughts that you've had. Even if we don't speak our negative thoughts aloud, they still impact the energy around us. Sometimes we think that because we didn't actually say something, we still have a position of righteousness. I didn't call you that, but you thought it. So if you thought it, own that. This understanding, he says, is crucial to healing the tension that we so often hold inside. You have to own that thought because that thought contributed to the tension that was created in that moment. When we allow tension and negative energy to persist, it will eventually shape our reality in a way that's biased and unhealthy. Don't allow tension and pain and confusion to persist for too long. It'll hurt you, and it'll influence your perspective of reality in a way that's not productive. He continues to reflect on how emotions shape our reality and our actions. What my experience showed me is that we tend to become the emotions instead of just feeling them and letting them pass. It's like I became hate instead of just saying, "Oh, that was hateful. Do I want to respond to that?" He elaborates on how we don't pause to process our emotions. We don't pause and think about the impact of feeling hate on your physical being. Was it personal? Is this person just a miserable person? Do I have to internalize what they're saying? But when we're already on edge or caught up in the biases we've carried for years, it's easy to jump into reaction. You're ready to respond as soon as the invitation is presented to you. You may very well be justified in your anger, but my anger killed me. He points out that had he been able to step back rather than reacting out of anger, the outcome may have been different. If I was able to see what I was in a different way, instead of responding to it with anger, I could have responded to it with responsibility, with hope. The more he shares, the clearer it becomes how deep the shift was in him. He speaks about how years of holding on to pain and anger had a profound effect on his body. The further removed I am from feeling all of that pain for so long, it damaged my body. It made me so sick because of how I was thinking. The reset he experienced through his near-death journey allowed him to shed those old narratives and beliefs. The only way I was able to shake the connection to those stories and those narratives is through having that reset, having those narratives shaken off of me. He now speaks about the clarity his near-death experience gave him, allowing him to approach life with a new perspective. My experience occurred in such a way that it gave me some different kind of clarity, and there's an opportunity for me to move forward differently, period. Now, he says, it's a choice. Now, if I don't take that opportunity, that's the choice I make. But the opportunity exists. He acknowledges that even after his experience, he still revisits the same struggles, the same frustrations. I do revisit the same frustration. I revisit the same moments of hopelessness. But now, he has a choice in how to respond to these emotions. Now I ask myself, am I going to choose to stay in that emotion? Am I going to become hopelessness? Am I going to become frustration? Am I going to become hate? Instead, he's learned to process it, let it pass, and move on. I'm going to process it, let it do what it's going to do in that moment, and then leave it alone. Let it go and move on to the next thought. As he continues to reflect on his experience, he shares how everything is just a choice of perspective and stories. Choice. We're just having an experience here. And because of the narratives and the stories that we choose, it becomes either a negative experience or a positive one. But it's all just stories, and you don't have to choose those stories. He goes on to explain that we're born with a sense of who we are, but the world molds us into something else. You come here already equipped with a function here, and then we're not taught to honor that in any way. We're taught who to be, what our name is, what's important, who we're supposed to like, who we're supposed to hate, how we're supposed to act. This conditioning, he says, causes us to forget our authentic selves. We're told all of this stuff, and then we expect people to develop into authentic human beings when they've never made a decision for themselves at all. They've just accepted prepackaged identities. There's no choice in that. You're just selecting from among what's not even available to you, but it's actually what's pushed on you by people who actually love you. He acknowledges that this advice often comes from a place of love, but explains how it doesn't always work. They're giving you this advice because they love you. They're telling you to think this way because they think it worked for them. But it doesn't work. Look at the world around us. This thinking, these orientations that we have toward each other, this planet and this life, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. After everything he's learned, he says that the clarity he's gained has completely reshaped his understanding of what it means to be human. The more clear I have become about what being a human being is, the mind, the body, the ego, and this soul thing, that is infinite, and it leaves this place perfect. It doesn't hold on to human trauma. It doesn't hold on to this stuff, but it's permanent, and it's what you leave here as. That's what you are. He reflects on how we are all in the process of creating our future. We are creating our next life right now, in this moment, with our attention. And as long as we can own our attention and not allow our attention to be totally manipulated and injected with a bunch of software that doesn't originate inside of us, we can control our future. If you focus on the negative, you're only compounding negativity. But if you focus on hope, you increase the chances of something better happening. If you focus on misery, you're compounding misery. If you focus on hope, you're increasing the probability that other things can happen outside of the negative possibilities. And the real power comes when we understand how to collectively focus our attention. If we collectively start understanding how to galvanize our attention in different ways, then we can magnify our creative capacity. Imagine if 20,000, 30,000, or 1,000,000 individuals can focus their attention in a unified way and what they can do. Through this radical shift in understanding, he now sees the incredible potential within each of us. When we collectively focus on something, we can create a massive change. The way we look at life, the way we react to it, the way we give our attention. That's what shapes the world we live in. And with that, he leaves us with a final thought. It's all just about awareness. Becoming aware of the stories we're telling ourselves and the emotions we're choosing to carry with us. And once we understand that, the world becomes a much more beautiful and expansive place. This is the powerful message he shared with us today, and it's a reminder to each of us. The way we live our lives, the way we think, and the way we interact with others all begins with our choice of attention. What we focus on creates our reality. And that's the end of his story. Thank you for listening, and we hope you find clarity and inspiration in his words. Let us know what you think in the comments below.